All right. Hey, everybody. We're back with another dose of Getting Technical. And this week is a very special episode. We have Rex Gill here with us from PowerSi, and he's here to talk to you about silica and how it plays a role with your cannabis production and the forms of silica that might be available for your plant. So, with that, Rex, take it from here and tell us a little bit about your company and kind of what you do.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. And yeah, PowerSi, we started it in 2016 with the intention of making a better, more affordable silicic acid than what was currently on the market. And that's what we set out to do, and we did it. And then since then, I've really focused on not coming out with a lot of products, but coming out with really good products that are all, the backbone of them is all silicic acid. Silicic acid is a really special thing, and it's become really popular over the last few years, and I'm excited to see it grow. That's the real premise of the company is silicic acid. So everything we make, that's the backbone of the products.
Right on. Mason, let me stop you. That leads right into one of my questions that I had for you here, Rex, is given, there's a couple different forms of silica that I hear on the market. Can you talk a little bit about the benefits of silic acid in particular over something?
Yeah.
Why? Yeah. Thank you.
So, the most common forms of silica that are used in any kind of agriculture are potassium silicate, silicon dioxide, and then monosilicic acid. Monosilicic acid, I call it the little silica. It's a lot smaller of a molecule, and it's much more bioavailable to your plants than potassium silicate is. Potassium silicate, once it's fed to the plants, it has to go through a process called silicification in order for your plants to actually uptake it. And that process can, depending on your microlife and your conditions, that can take up to 8 weeks to start actually getting silica into the plant. So you're really not getting much benefit of silica using potassium silicate. Maybe you'd get some if you were say in living soil. But for our industry, we're all growing, most people aren't reusing their medium. We're all growing, fast growing crops that, the life cycle of the plant is, 11 to 13 weeks. So you're really not getting any silica benefit using potassium silicate.
Right on.
Yeah. And, that's a good point, Rex, because, obviously Jack's Nutrients, water soluble fertilizer line. And we talk all the time with folks that are like, well, can't you just add in this? And, it's understanding that, hey, a lot of times if that's not dissolving, it's going to take a long time to break down to really have, an effect on what you're doing with your plants. And, talking about potassium silicate is that, sure, there's silica in there, it's in the name, but that doesn't mean that your plants are just going to take it up. So with that, what kind of benefits do you see from adding silica to your setup? What sort of benefits does the silica provide to the plant in general? And, should it be used from clones to finish? And how often should it be added?
Okay, so yeah, during veg, I would recommend using PowerSi Original during the cloning process and also during vegetative growth. During the cloning process, you're going to get faster rooting times. But to me, the real benefit is when you're starting to harden off your clones and taking the domes off and on, that process becomes much easier when your plants have silicic acid in them. They're able to tolerate that drastic humidity change much better. A lot of growers are taking the dome off, watching the clones for 3 hours at a time, putting it back on, all that back and forth stuff. When you use PowerSi in your clones, you're going to pop the domes off and they're going to stand right up and they're going to be good to go. In veg, though, you're going to see, thicker stalks and stems, increased growth rates, increased nutrient absorption. That's one of the really cool things about silicic acid is silicic acid has a special relationship with calcium, which is typically a slow-moving element. And it's usually really hard for plants to absorb calcium. Yep. You find a lot of growers, they're overfeeding calcium because, and it's not because there's not calcium in the medium, it's because your plants can't absorb calcium. So PowerSi actually latches onto calcium and sucks it into the plant.
Right on. We talk about that calcium issue a lot. You know, there can be sufficient calcium to the root zone there, but that doesn't mean it's making its way into the plant, just like you said, Rex. So it's nice to hear that PowerSi can kind of help out with that.
Yeah, I think salts actually helped PowerSi because I think people, when they started taking out fulvic acid and they started taking out humic acid and some of these things, they needed something that would help with availability. And I think PowerSi, I think the combination of having good products, but also salts becoming more popular actually accelerated the growth of PowerSi, which is a more, organic kind of product.
Sure,
Yeah.
no doubt.
So with PowerSi being a silicic acid, does that affect the solution pH at all? Is there anything to look out for from that point?
Yeah, for sure. So PowerSi is definitely going to have the opposite effect of potassium silicate. It's going to lower your pH. So silicic acid, when it's in a liquid form in a bottle, it has to be at a pH of less than 3 or it's not going to stay stable. So typically, when you're using RO water, you're going to see more of a drop because tap water is obviously a lot more stable. But yeah, you're going to see a pH drop when you use PowerSi. It's totally normal.
Yep, and nothing to worry about there. You're just bringing that back up to the range you want it to be. Yeah. So right on. So, speaking about, we talked about pH. The next thing that I had a question for you on, Rex, was solubility considerations and precipitation issues, in particular when you're mixing concentrated stock solutions that are used with injectors. So what are some of the considerations that a grower needs to take into account when mixing concentrated stock solutions with silica and fertilizers?
Yeah, well, so I mean, it definitely needs to be kept separate. You can't mix them together. I prefer if people are on injection systems, I much prefer them do direct injection rather than making a stock tank. So once you put PowerSi in water, it's activating and it really needs to be used within 3 days.
Okay.
So we do have guys who run it in stock tanks, but I tell them like you need to, make sure that it's mixing, and then also you can put a little pump in the stock tank and just run it 5 minutes every hour. But I much prefer it be directly injected using like an Editron or, a lot of the injection systems nowadays, they're getting down to 0.5 ml a gallon. It's not an issue.
Yep, right on.
But for growers, that is one of the nuances of PowerSi. Really, once you put it in your reservoir, it should be used within 3 days, and I prefer it be mixed and fed within 24 hours.
Right on. Good stuff. Cool. Yeah, and it's similar to fertilizers. You have to take those precipitation issues into account when you're mixing calcium containing fertilizers. You have to keep the calcium separate from the sulfates and the phosphates as well. So
exactly,
it's just very similar. And one of the reasons I think PowerSi goes so well with the Jack's Nutrients line.
Yeah, we have a lot of customers running the combo together. I see great results all over Instagram, which is nice to see.
Likewise, yeah, a lot of good feedback with PowerSi and Jack's for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, you guys hit on it right what I was thinking about. I was like, that's why we wanted to bring you on, Rex. We see a ton of growers out there using Jack's Nutrients with PowerSi, having killer results. I always see that we're both tagged on the same photos, that we're sharing back and forth. So, again, Rex, thanks for coming on with us. Is there anything we missed? What else should people know about PowerSi?
PowerSi Bloom is our flower additive, and it's got a little bit less silicone because you don't need as much in bloom. But I think what people don't realize is that PowerSi Bloom is more of like a quality enhancing additive. It's got a lot of aminos in it and some plant extracts that really enhance resin production and the size of flowers. So that's, again, I think that's another one that became really popular because of, everyone went from running 10-part liquid formulas down to running 3-part salt formulas. And I think PowerSi Bloom kind of brings back some of that, what's the good term for it? Like organic love that, is known for giving your plants, better flavors and all that kind of good stuff.
Right on.
Right on, man. Well, Rex, thanks again for joining us today. And to everybody out there, as always, feel free to shoot Dan and I your questions, and we'll see you next time on Getting Technical. See you guys.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Rex, thanks, man.
Cheers, guys.